Zoe Williams tucked a loose strand of braided hair behind her ear as she scanned the snack aisle at Morgan's supermarket. The 16-year-old had dropped by after debate team practice to pick up a few things her mom needed for dinner. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father. "Don't forget the paprika. Mum says it's crucial." Zoe smiled. Her dad, Chief Marcus Williams, had been leading the Oakdale Police Department for 3 years now, but he still found time to send silly texts about spices. As she reached for a bag of chips, Zoe noticed a store employee appear at the end of the aisle. Nothing unusual at first, but when she moved to the next aisle, the same man followed, pretending to restock items while watching her from the corner of his eye. Zoe had grown used to this kind of attention. Despite her simple jeans, debate, team hoodie and backpack, she seemed to attract suspicion in certain stores. Her parents had prepared her for these moments, teaching her to stay calm and remember her worth wasn't defined by others' prejudices. "Can I help you find anything?" The voice came from behind, making Zoe jump slightly. A different employee, a woman with a pinched expression and a manager's badge reading Nancy, stood with arms folded across her chest. "No, thanks. I know what I need," Zoe replied politely, moving toward the spice section. Her heartbeat quickened as she realized both employees were now following her, not even attempting to be subtle. Nancy spoke into her radio. "Steve, we've got a situation in aisle 7. Subject matches the description." Subject? Zoe felt her cheeks burn. She was just shopping for dinner ingredients. The term made her sound like a criminal. She found the paprika and added it to her basket, trying to ignore the employees trailing her. As she headed toward the produce section, a burly security guard appeared, blocking her path. "Miss, I need you to come with me," he said, voice loud enough that nearby shoppers turned to stare. "Excuse me?" Zoe asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Why? I'm just shopping." Nancy stepped forward. "We've had reports of a young black girl in a hoodie shoplifting today. We need to check your bag." Zoe felt the familiar mixture of anger and humiliation rise in her chest. "I haven't taken anything. You can check my basket. I'm just buying groceries for my family." "Your backpack," Steve insisted, pointing. "Open it." Customers were watching now, some pretending not to notice, others openly staring. Zoe thought about calling her father, but hesitated. She had promised herself she wouldn't use her dad's position to get special treatment. Besides, she knew the routine. Stay calm, comply safely, address the injustice later. "Fine," she said, unzipping her backpack. "But this is harassment. I've done nothing wrong." The security guard rifled through her school materials, textbooks, notebooks, pens, calculator. Nancy and Steve watched closely, their faces showing disappointment when they found nothing suspicious. "Those chips in your basket," Nancy said, doubling down. "Did you scan them at the self-checkout first?" "I haven't been to any checkout yet," Zoe replied, struggling to keep her voice even. "I'm still shopping, as you can see." An older woman shopping nearby cleared her throat. "Excuse me, but I've been watching this young lady shop normally. Why are you treating her like this?" Nancy ignored the woman, focusing on Zoe. "We have security footage of someone fitting your description pocketing items earlier. There are probably dozens of people fitting my description who shop here daily," Zoe countered. "You picked me because I'm black, not because I did anything wrong." Steve's face flushed. "No one said anything about race. We're just doing our job." "Let me see this security footage," Zoe said, steadying her voice. The civics and debate training was kicking in. If someone was shoplifting, it wasn't me. I just got here 20 minutes ago from school. Nancy exchanged glances with the security guard. "We don't have to show you anything. Store policy allows us to check bags if we have reasonable suspicion." "And what's your reasonable suspicion exactly?" Zoe asked, feeling more confident as she recognized their hesitation. Because I'm starting to think it's just the color of my skin. More shoppers had stopped to watch the confrontation. Zoe noticed a few had their phones out, possibly recording. Part of her felt ashamed to be the center of attention, but another part was glad for witnesses. The security guard shifted uncomfortably. "Look, we had a report, that's all." An idea struck Zoe. "Check your cameras for when I entered the store. I came straight from debate practice at Oakdale High. You can call my coach to verify." Nancy's walkie-talkie crackled. Another voice said, "Nancy, can you come to the office? We need to discuss something." Nancy glared at Zoe before responding, "On my way." To Zoe, she said, "Wait here with Steve and don't try to leave." As Nancy walked away, Zoe noticed more customers gathering, some whispering and pointing. The embarrassment was overwhelming, but she held her ground. She thought about texting her dad, but decided against it. This wasn't just about her. It happened to people who didn't have police chiefs for parents, too. An elderly black woman approached her and quietly said, "You handling this real well, honey. Don't let them intimidate you." Zoe nodded gratefully. Steve maintained his stance nearby, watching her every move as if she might suddenly bolt with her half-filled basket of groceries. Minutes ticked by. Zoe checked the time on her phone. Her mom would be wondering where she was soon. Finally, Nancy returned, her face noticeably less confident. "We've reviewed the footage," she said stiffly. "The person in question was wearing a blue hoodie, not gray like yours." "So I'm free to finish my shopping?" Zoe asked. Nancy nodded curtly. "Yes, but we'll be keeping an eye out. The suspect is still at large." As Nancy and Steve retreated, whispers rippled through the onlooking shoppers. The elderly woman who had supported Zoe shook her head and muttered, "Same old story, different day." Zoe took a deep breath and continued shopping. But the joy of the simple errand was gone. Her hands trembled slightly as she selected tomatoes and lettuce. She felt eyes on her from every direction, some sympathetic, others still suspicious. At the checkout, the cashier was excessively friendly, perhaps having heard about the incident. Zoe responded with polite but brief answers, wanting nothing more than to leave the store. As she walked to the bus stop, grocery bags in hand, she finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of what had happened. Tears threatened, but she blinked them back. This wasn't the first time, and it wouldn't be the last. But knowing that didn't make it hurt any less. The bus ride home was a blur. Zoe stared out the window, replaying the incident in her mind. By the time she reached her stop, she had composed herself enough to walk the final blocks to her family's two-story colonial with her head held high. Her mother, Dr. Tanya Williams, was chopping vegetables in the kitchen when Zoe arrived. One look at her daughter's face told her something was wrong. "Baby, what happened?" she asked, setting down her knife. Zoe placed the groceries on their counter. "The usual. Got followed around Morgan's supermarket, accused of shoplifting. Had my bag searched in front of everyone." Dr. Williams' expression shifted from concern to familiar anger. As a psychiatrist who specialized in trauma, she understood the psychological impact of these experiences all too well. She wiped her hands on a dish towel and pulled Zoe into a tight embrace. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. Did you call your father?" "No," Zoe said firmly. "I handled it myself. I don't want special treatment just because Dad's the chief." Her mother nodded, pride mixing with sadness in her eyes. "You shouldn't have to handle anything. You were just shopping," she sighed. "Your father needs to know, though. This is exactly the kind of thing he's trying to change." Zoe unpacked the groceries, including the paprika that had cost her dignity to purchase. "I know. I'll tell him. At dinner." Later that evening, Chief Marcus Williams arrived home, his tall frame filling the doorway as he hung up his jacket. Despite the pressures of his job, he always made it home for family dinner unless there was a major emergency. Tonight, he sensed the tension as soon as he sat down at the table. "What's going on?" he asked, looking between his wife and daughter. Zoe recounted the afternoon's events while pushing food around her plate. She described the employees following, the public confrontation, and the half-hearted non-apology when they realized their mistake. With each detail, her father's expression darkened. As Oakdale's first black police chief, Marcus Williams had made community relations and anti-bias training priorities for his department. But he knew better than most that institutional change was slow, and his badge couldn't protect his family from everyday racism. "Did you get their names?" he asked when Zoe finished. "The manager was Nancy, the other guy was Steve, and there was a security guard whose name I didn't catch." Chief Williams nodded slowly. "I'm proud of how you handled yourself, Zoe. You stood your ground respectfully. That takes courage." "But it shouldn't have happened," her mother interjected. "Marcus, this is the third time this year. The movie theater, that boutique downtown, and now Morgan's." "I know," he said quietly, "and I'm not letting it slide. This time," Zoe looked up, "Dad, please don't go in there as the police chief. It'll just make things awkward. I have to shop there sometimes." Her father considered this. "How about this? Tomorrow's Saturday. Let's go together as father and daughter. No uniform, no badge. Just a dad and his kid buying groceries." He paused. "And if we happen to run into the manager, we can have a conversation." Zoe wasn't entirely comfortable with the idea, but recognized the determined look in her father's eyes. There would be no talking him out of it. The next morning, Zoe and her father drove to Morgan's supermarket. Chief Williams was dressed casually in jeans and a polo shirt. No indication of his profession except for the confident way he carried himself. "Let's get a few things we need, and then we'll see about finding the manager," he said as they entered the store. They hadn't been shopping for 5 minutes when Zoe spotted Nancy from the day before, supervising the front registers. She nudged her father and nodded in Nancy's direction. "That's her." Chief Williams picked up a basket. "Let's shop first. I want to see if they treat us the same way." Sure enough, within minutes, Steve appeared at the end of their aisle, pretending to restock shelves while watching them. This time, Zoe felt a strange mixture of anger and vindication. At least her father could see she hadn't been exaggerating. "Interesting," her father murmured, as Steve followed them to the next aisle. "I'm going to pick up something from the far end. Keep shopping, and I'll be right back." As soon as her father walked away, Steve approached Zoe directly. "Back again?" he asked, his tone accusatory. "We're keeping an eye on you today." Zoe met his gaze. "I can see that. Just like yesterday, when you wrongfully accused me of shoplifting." Steve's face reddened. "We had reasonable suspicion. Store policy? What's the nature of your suspicion today?" Chief Williams asked, returning with a jar of peanut butter. His voice was calm, but carried the natural authority that made him effective as a police chief. Steve startled. "Sir, we've had issues with certain individuals recently." "Certain individuals," Chief Williams repeated. My daughter was here yesterday, and your staff humiliated her in front of other customers based on what appears to be racial profiling. I'd like to speak with your manager." Steve's eyes widened as he processed the information. "Your daughter? I'll get Nancy." As Steve hurried away, Zoe whispered, "You didn't mention you're the police chief." "Not yet," her father replied. "Let's see how they handle a simple customer complaint first." Nancy approached them moments later, her customer service smile strained. "Good morning. I understand there's a concern about our loss prevention protocols." Chief Williams nodded. "Yes. My daughter was falsely accused of shoplifting yesterday, searched in public and embarrassed, only for your staff to realize they had the wrong person entirely." Nancy's smile didn't waver. "Sir, we take theft very seriously, and sometimes our staff makes judgment calls based on suspicious behavior." What suspicious behavior did my daughter exhibit? She was getting ingredients. For dinner, well, we had reports of someone of similar description. Similar how? Chief Williams pressed. Young, female, black? Nancy's smile finally faltered. Sir, race has nothing to do with our security protocols. Then perhaps you can explain why my daughter, an honor student with no record of disciplinary issues, was singled out and humiliated while other customers shopped undisturbed. A small crowd of shoppers had begun to gather, much like the day before. This time, Zoe felt a surge of confidence rather than shame. Her father wasn't raising his voice or causing a scene, but his precise questions were clearly making Nancy uncomfortable. Sir, if your daughter feels she was treated unfairly, we can certainly... My daughter was treated unfairly. Chief Williams interrupted, his voice still measured but firm. And I'd like to understand what training your staff receives regarding bias and profiling. Nancy glanced around nervously. Perhaps we should continue this conversation in the office. I'm comfortable having it right here, Chief Williams replied. Since my daughter was publicly accused, I think it's appropriate that your response be public as well. Steve had returned with an older man in a suit, presumably the store director. He quickly assessed the situation and stepped forward. I'm Richard Morgan, the owner. Let me apologize for any misunderstanding yesterday. We can certainly discuss this in my office for more privacy. Chief Williams extended his hand. Marcus Williams, and this is my daughter, Zoe. Mr. Morgan shook his hand, then froze as recognition dawned on his face. Chief Williams, Oakdale, Police Department. The same, Chief Williams confirmed, though I'm here today as a father concerned about how his daughter was treated in your establishment. The atmosphere shifted immediately. Mr. Morgan's professional smile became more genuine, almost eager. Of course, Chief Williams, please, let's talk in my office. Nancy, Steve, join us, please. As they were led to the back of the store, Zoe caught her father's eye. He gave her a subtle wink. They both knew what was happening, the sudden change. In treatment wasn't because they deserved respect, but because of who her father was. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Mr. Morgan's office was small but well-appointed, with framed photos of him shaking hands with local politicians and community leaders. Zoe noticed her father's picture among them, taken at a Chamber of Commerce event last year, and suppressed. A smile. Mr. Morgan hadn't made the connection until now. Please have a seat. Mr. Morgan gestured to chairs across from his desk. Nancy and Steve remained standing near the door, looking distinctly uncomfortable. Chief Williams, I want to personally apologize for any misunderstanding. Morgan's supermarket has always prided itself on being a cornerstone of the Oakdale community. I appreciate that, Chief Williams replied, but I'm not sure this was a misunderstanding. It seems like a clear case of profiling. Mr. Morgan glanced nervously at Nancy and Steve. We have strict policies against discrimination of any kind. Our team is trained to watch for suspicious behavior, not specific types of people. Zoe spoke up. Then why was I followed from the moment I entered the store? I was just shopping for dinner ingredients. Nancy shifted her weight. We had received reports of shoplifting earlier that day. The description was young black girl in a hoodie. Zoe finished for her. Do you know how many people that could describe? Did you follow all of them? Steve looked at the floor while Mr. Morgan cleared his throat. Chief Williams, I assure you, if our team made an error in judgment, this isn't about a single error in judgment, Chief Williams interrupted calmly. This is about systemic bias that affects how your employees determine who looks suspicious. And it's not just your store. My daughter has experienced this kind of treatment across Oakdale. He leaned forward. As police chief, I've implemented mandatory anti-bias training for every officer. We've reduced unwarranted stops by 40% while maintaining public safety. It's possible, Mr. Morgan, but it requires acknowledging the problem first. Mr. Morgan's expression shifted from defensive to contemplative. I see your point, Chief. What would you suggest? For starters, reviewing your security protocols. Are your employees instructed to follow specific customers? On what basis? Do you track who gets stopped and searched to look for patterns? Nancy interjected, Sir, we don't have the resources the police department has. It doesn't require many resources to implement basic fairness, Chief Williams replied. And the cost of losing customers who feel unwelcome or harassed is much higher. Zoe watched the dynamic shift as Mr. Morgan began nodding along with her father. She felt a mixture of pride and frustration, proud of her father's measured approach, but frustrated that it took his position as police chief to make them listen. I have another suggestion, Zoe said suddenly. All eyes turned to her. Your staff needs education about bias. My school's social justice club partners with businesses for awareness workshops. We could help. Mr. Morgan looked surprised, then impressed. That's actually a very constructive idea. My daughter, Chief Williams said with a smile, has always been solution-oriented, even when faced with unfair treatment. Mr. Morgan turned to Nancy and Steve. What happened yesterday exactly? I want the full story. Steve spoke hesitantly. We received a report of shoplifting. The description was vague. Young black female, hoodie, backpack. Nancy asked me to keep an eye out. Nancy continued, When I saw Zoe, she matched the basic description. I instructed Steve to observe her, and then we confronted her. Without seeing her take anything? Mr. Morgan asked. Well, no, but preventative measures. Did you confront any other customers matching that description? Nancy and Steve exchanged glances. No, Steve admitted. Mr. Morgan sighed deeply. I owe you both an apology, he said to Zoe and her father. This isn't what Morgan stands for. My father opened this store 60 years ago with the belief that everyone deserves respect when they walk through our doors. He looked at Nancy and Steve. We'll be implementing new training protocols immediately, and there will be consequences for profiling customers. Chief Williams nodded. That's all we're asking for, accountability and change. And one more thing, Zoe added, a public apology. Not just to me, but to acknowledge this happens and commit to doing better. Other kids don't have police chiefs for parents to help them fight these battles. Mr. Morgan considered this, then nodded. You're right. We'll issue a statement and post it in the store, and I'd like to take you up on that workshop offer. As they left the office, Mr. Morgan insisted on walking them through the store. Zoe noticed how employees and customers alike noted the owner's deferential attitude toward them. Word would spread quickly. Near the exit, they encountered the elderly black woman who had supported Zoe the day before. She was struggling with a heavy shopping bag. Mrs. Johnson, Mr. Morgan greeted her. Please, let us help you with that. I'm fine, Mrs. Johnson replied, then recognized Zoe. Well, hello there. You doing better today, honey? Zoe smiled. Yes, Mom. This is my father. Chief Williams extended his hand. Marcus Williams, thank you for supporting my daughter yesterday. Williams? The police chief? Mrs. Johnson looked between them. Well, I'll be. Those folks had no idea who they were messing with. That's the problem, though, isn't it? Zoe said quietly. It shouldn't matter who my father is. No one should be treated that way. Mrs. Johnson patted her hand. You're right, child, but sometimes it takes power to change things. You use that privilege wisely. Outside in the parking lot, Zoe and her father walked in comfortable silence for a moment. You handled that well, Chief Williams finally said. The workshop idea was brilliant. I learned from you, Zoe replied. You always say change comes from education, not just confrontation. He put an arm around her shoulders. I'm sorry you had to go through that, both yesterday and all the other times. It's not your fault, Dad. Maybe not directly, he sighed, but as police chief, I'm responsible for setting the tone in this community. We've made progress, but clearly not enough. Zoe thought about Nancy and Steve, Mr. Morgan, and Mrs. Johnson. Do you think anything will really change? Her father considered this as they reached their car. Change is slow, but it happens. 20 years ago, there wouldn't have been a black police chief in Oakdale to have this conversation. 10 years ago, Mr. Morgan might not have listened so openly. He unlocked the car. And today, my brilliant daughter suggested a student-led workshop on bias, and a business owner agreed to it. That's progress. As they drove home, Zoe's phone buzzed with texts from her friends in the Social Justice Club, excited about the workshop opportunity. She began typing out ideas, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. The incident at Morgan's supermarket wouldn't be the last time Zoe faced prejudice, but she was learning that with each confrontation came an opportunity, not just to defend herself, but to create ripples of change that might help others. Her father had always told her that justice wasn't just about enforcing laws, it was about transforming hearts and minds. As police chief, he worked on the systems. And now, in her own way, Zoe was doing the same. When they arrived home, Dr. Williams was waiting on the porch. "How did it go?" she asked anxiously. Zoe and her father exchanged glances. "We made an impact," Chief Williams said. "And," Zoe added with a determined smile, "we're just getting started."